When I was 13, my brother told everyone I stole our dad's credit card. I got grounded the whole summer without anyone even asking me what happened. 3 days later, my aunt checked the bank statement, and what she found crushed his perfect son image for good. The day my own mother slammed a receipt in my face, accusing me of something I didn't do, was the day I stopped being a kid. It was the day I truly understood I was invisible, and that no one was coming to save me. Our kitchen, usually the heart of our home, felt like a cold courtroom that morning. My brother, Brandon, sat there with that familiar smirk, while my dad held a bank statement like a death warrant. I was 13 then, just starting to feel out my place in the world, and I realized my family didn't actually see me. Not as a whole person with thoughts or feelings, or a version of the truth worth hearing. Brandon was 17 years older, a varsity soccer star, straight-A student. The kind of kid teachers emailed my mom about, using phrases like gifted leadership material. Me? I was just decent. Not amazing, not terrible, just there. And that was the problem. I wasn't worth noticing unless something went wrong. We lived in a typical suburban neighborhood in Georgia. Dad was a banker, Mom ran a small online business. To outsiders, we were that polished middle-class family with matching Christmas pajamas. But inside, the pressure to be perfect suffocated everything. Especially Brandon. He could do no wrong. If he got a C, the teacher was unfair. If he broke curfew, he was helping a friend. If something went missing, guess who got blamed? I was used to being overlooked. It didn't bother me much when I was younger. I had my video games, my sketchbook, my Aunt Sarah's place, which felt like a sanctuary. But by 13, I saw the imbalance. The way Dad's face lit up when Brandon walked in. How Mom always asked about Brandon's day but barely remembered my math test. And the worst part? Brandon knew. He leaned into it. Still, I tried. I cleaned up. Kept my head down. Never talked back. Even when Brandon teased me or took my stuff, I told myself, just wait. Things will even out. People will see you. But they didn't. The incident that changed everything happened on a random Tuesday in July. Summer break, sweltering heat. We were all stuck at home. That morning, Mom banged on my door like the house was on fire. Alex! Get downstairs right now. Heart racing, I stumbled out of bed. She was already fuming in the kitchen. Brandon sat at the island, arms crossed, that smug smirk fixed on his face. Dad stood by the fridge, holding a printed bank statement. What is this? Mom snapped, shoving a receipt in my face. $182.34 from a local electronics store. You want to explain this charge on Dad's credit card? I had no idea what she was talking about. What? Don't lie, Brandon cut in. I saw you yesterday looking at headsets online. Don't act like you weren't planning something. I stared at him, stunned. I didn't buy anything. But it didn't matter. Mom's face was already set. Don't play dumb, Alex. We know it was you. The card was in the kitchen drawer. I checked this morning and it was gone. She held up a hand as I tried to speak. Enough. You're grounded. All electronics gone. No leaving the house. You're lucky we're not calling the store to make them pull footage. My chest tightened. I didn't do anything. Why don't you even? You want to dig yourself deeper? My dad, who usually just shrunk into himself during these moments, cut me off, his voice sharper than I'd ever heard it. You're not to use my cards again. Understood? I looked between them. Mom glaring, Dad disappointed. Brandon looking like he was trying not to laugh. Something broke inside me. This wasn't a conversation. It was a sentence. I wasn't being asked. I wasn't being believed. Just accused, convicted. They didn't even ask me if I'd done it. They just assumed because I was the less trustworthy one, the one who wasn't Brandon. So, that was it. Grounded for the summer. No phone, no PlayStation, no TV. I could read, clean, and reflect on my choices. I barely left my room. Mason would hum stupid victory tunes, whispering, hope that headset was worth it. I wanted to scream, to break something. But I didn't. I just waited. 3 days later, Aunt Sarah came over. She was Mom's younger sister, but they were night and day. Sarah was loud, funny, sharp in a way that didn't apologize. She worked in cybersecurity, always brought cool gadgets, and actually listened when I talked. She was the only adult I felt I could trust. When she heard I was grounded, she raised an eyebrow. "What did you do? Rob a bank?" I gave a hollow laugh. Mom launched into the whole story. But Aunt Sarah didn't look convinced. "What store was it?" "Electro Hub over on Elm?" Mom replied. Aunt Sarah nodded slowly. "You have the receipt?" Dad handed over the statement. She studied it, eyes narrowing. "Mind if I check something?" That was the first time anyone looked uncertain. Mom crossed her arms. "What for?" Sarah shrugged. "Just want to see the timestamp. Maybe there's camera footage." "Why?" Brandon asked, his voice suddenly a little too tight. Aunt Sarah looked at him, a beat too long. "Just curious." She left shortly after, but her expression stayed with me. It wasn't just curiosity. It was suspicion. And that was the first flicker of hope. I didn't see her again until the next morning. She showed up unannounced, holding a PDF and her iPad. Mom looked annoyed, but Sarah walked in like she owned the place. "Hey," she said to me like it was a normal day. Then she turned to Dad. "You said the charge was made Monday, right?" "Yeah," he replied. She smiled. "Funny, because the charge didn't go through until Tuesday at 3:46 p.m. And guess what? ElectroHub has excellent security. They log every transaction with the cardholder's ID. They keep the camera footage for 10 days. Mom stiffened. "What are you saying?" Aunt Sarah laid the iPad on the kitchen table. "I'm saying the person who used that card is 6 feet tall and wearing a varsity soccer hoodie. So, unless Alex had a growth spurt and stole Brandon's clothes," Dad lip slapped. Mom opened her mouth, then closed it. Brandon wasn't in the room. Aunt Sarah tapped the iPad again. "Would you like to see the footage?" But that was where things shifted. Not resolved. Not yet. Because Brandon had vanished. And what followed after that was something none of us saw coming. My parents didn't say much after Aunt Sarah showed them the footage. There wasn't much they could say. The video wasn't grainy. It was crystal clear, Brandon, in all his smug varsity glory, walking into ElectroHub with Dad's credit card, walking out with a new gaming headset, speakers, and a soda. He even gave the cashier a thumbs up. I watched from the hallway. My heart pounded. You'd think I'd feel vindicated. I didn't. I felt numb. Because in that moment, I realized it wasn't just that they didn't believe me. It was that they didn't want to. The truth was staring them in the face, undeniable and embarrassing. And instead of apologizing, instead of owning up, my parents just stood there in silence, shifting awkwardly like kids caught cheating. Aunt Sarah, bless her, tried to bridge the gap. "Well, anyone want to say anything to Alex?" Still nothing. Dad cleared his throat. "We'll deal with Brandon." Aunt Sarah raised an eyebrow. "That's not what I asked." Mom looked irritated. "We didn't know, Sarah." We acted on the information we had. Sarah folded her arms. No, you acted on what Brandon told you. You never once asked Alex for his side. Silence. I stepped into the room. My voice was quiet but firm. So, am I still grounded? Mom looked like she'd bitten into a lemon. We'll talk about it. That was it. Not sorry, Alex. Not we messed up. Not we'll make it right. Just, we'll talk about it. Like I was a minor inconvenience. Like Brandon stealing from Dad and throwing me under the bus was just a bump in the road. Aunt Sarah stared at them in disbelief. Are you kidding me right now? Dad ran a hand over his face. It's been a long week. I should have screamed. Thrown something. Instead, I just turned and walked out. That night, I stared at the ceiling. The injustice burned. It wasn't just the false accusation. It was that Brandon got away with everything, every time. He could lie, cheat, steal, and still walk away with his reputation intact. And I'd always be the one left cleaning up the mess. I started paying closer attention after that. And what I saw made things worse. Brandon never even got punished. The day after Aunt Sarah showed them the footage, he came home with new cleats and a smug grin. No apology, no explanation. Just went on like nothing happened. My parents didn't mention the incident again. They didn't say they were sorry. They didn't unground me, not officially. I just sort of ungrounded myself, and no one stopped me. 3 days later, I overheard Dad talking to Mom in the kitchen. We can't make a big deal out of it. If the school finds out Brandon's been doing anything untoward, they won't, Mom said quickly. We handled it. No one else needs to know. Sarah knows, but she won't say anything. She's family. I stood frozen in the hallway. They weren't protecting me. They were protecting Brandon's image. That was the moment something inside me changed. It was like a switch flipped. I stopped trying. I stopped hoping they'd see me. And instead, I started watching them closely, quietly. I started listening for patterns. Not just with Brandon, but with everything. How Dad handled bills. How Mom ran her business. What Brandon got away with, what was expected of me. By the time school started again in August, I was keeping a notebook. Not a journal. A notebook. Facts, patterns, quotes, timelines. I didn't know what I was planning yet, but I was planning something. At school, things weren't much better. Brandon made sure the headset story got around before I could defend myself. According to him, he caught me using Dad's card and decided to handle it quietly, taking the blame to protect me. He was the hero. They ate it up. I lost friends. People looked at me funny. Teachers started calling on me less, like they assumed I was the problem child. The narrative stuck. Brandon thrived. Team captain. His own car. Meanwhile, I was invisible. If I tried to speak up, I was told not to stir drama. Even Aunt Sarah started backing off. I think she felt like she did what she could, but nothing changed, and she had her own life. She'd check in via text, but it wasn't the same. So, I learned to operate in the shadows. I became the quiet observer, not out of fear, but out of strategy. I started noticing just how often Brandon lied, about little things, big things, everything in between. He'd brag to friends about cheating on tests, sneaking out, even breaking into someone's locker. He'd show off screenshots of girls he was texting. I kept my mouth shut, but I kept the receipts. Then, around mid-September, I saw something I wasn't supposed to. Walking past the garage, I heard Brandon's voice through the open side door. He was on the phone. No, I told you, just send it to the PayPal. Don't use Mom's Venmo again. She checks that. Pause. Yeah, I got the extra set of pills, too. I'll meet you Friday before practice. Pills? My stomach dropped. I ducked out of view. I waited until he left, then snuck into the garage. There was a locked drawer on Dad's old tool bench. No key, but I knew Brandon kept one taped under his nightstand drawer. I'd seen him use it once to get into Dad's liquor cabinet. I waited until Brandon went out that night, then snuck into his room, got the key, and opened the drawer. Inside were two small bags, one with cash, maybe a few $100s, and the other with pills. I didn't know what kind. Didn't care. All I knew was Brandon was doing something even more dangerous. He was dealing. And if my parents found out, they'd probably still find a way to blame me. I didn't take the evidence right away. I closed the drawer, relocked it, put everything back exactly as I found it. But now I had a new section in my notebook, labeled with a red tab. It was no longer just about defending myself. It was about building a case. And the thing is, once I started really paying attention, the pieces came together fast. I learned Brandon had created a fake email account to impersonate my dad and authorize late school assignments. I found a photo on his old phone of him keying someone's car in the school parking lot, someone who had beat him out for a student council nomination. I even found a folder hidden on a USB drive labeled "Do Not Open," full of screenshots and chat logs that would probably destroy his social life. But the real breaking point didn't come until the night of Dad's birthday. We were at a restaurant, just the four of us. Dad was drinking wine, telling the server it was his special day. Brandon was bragging about a scholarship scout who came to watch one of his soccer games. I just sat there, poking at my food, trying not to roll my eyes. Then Dad raised his glass. To Brandon, he said. Our future, our pride, our legacy. I blinked. Brandon beamed. Mom looked proud. And Alex, Dad added, like an afterthought, we're proud of you, too, son. Just stay on the right track. Stay on the right track. Like I was one bad choice away from ruining everything. Like Brandon wasn't sitting right there with a dealer contact in his phone and pills in our garage. I didn't say anything that night. But something shifted again. This time not from anger or pain. This time, it was clarity. I wasn't going to convince them. I wasn't going to wait for them to see the truth. I was going to show it to them. All of it at once. And I was going to make sure there was no walking it back. If the restaurant was the breaking point, what followed was the quiet collapse. Not of my family, not yet, but of my belief that I had any place in it as an equal. That night, after dinner, I didn't storm off. I didn't confront anyone. I just went upstairs, shut my door, and sat on the floor, staring at nothing. I kept hearing the words looping, just stay on the right track. They really thought I was the problem. Even with Brandon's lies. Even with Aunt Sarah showing them literal proof of his theft. Even with me keeping to myself for months, walking on eggshells. None of it mattered. I was still the kid who needed to be watched. And Brandon, he was still the golden boy, the perfect son. That realization hit harder than anything else. I wasn't just fighting to be heard. I was invisible. And being invisible in your own family is worse than being hated. Something inside me went numb after that. For weeks, I drifted through school and home like a ghost. I ate my meals quietly. Barely spoke. Teachers asked if something was wrong. I told them I was tired. They believed it. Who would assume the well-behaved kid with the quiet voice and average grades was quietly collapsing? Even Aunt Sarah noticed. She called me one night. Alex, talk to me. What's going on? I almost told her everything, the pills, the cash, the faked emails, the USB drive. But then I hesitated. Sarah was the only adult who had ever believed me without hesitation. If I told her all of this and she brushed it off too, I don't think I could have handled that. So, I lied. I'm okay, I said. Just tired of school. There was a pause. You sure? I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Yeah, I'll be fine. After we hung up, I stared at the USB drive again. I'd labeled it Exhibit A with a strip of masking tape. Everything was on there. Brendan's fake email headers, screenshots of his messages, photos of the pills and cash, even a copy of the ElectroHub footage Aunt Sarah had sent me. It was all organized in folders with notes and timestamps. For weeks, it just sat there, like a nuke under my bed. Just one push away from impact. But I didn't push it yet. Not emotionally, not mentally, not even practically. Because here's the truth no one tells you, having the evidence doesn't make you powerful. It just gives you a weapon. You still have to be strong enough to use it, and brave enough to face what happens after. So, I decided to wait. And while I waited, I started quietly rebuilding myself. I didn't plan it. It started with small things, like organizing my room, then my files, then diving into the one thing I'd always liked but never pursued, digital art. I used to draw a lot when I was younger, mainly cartoon characters or video game designs. But life pushed that interest away. After everything that happened, though, it became a lifeline. A way to zone out, to process, to escape. I downloaded a free drawing app and started sketching again. First just doodles, then full illustrations. I found YouTube tutorials, followed online artists, joined a subreddit. Slowly, the pages in my sketchbook filled with new life. The more I drew, the more I found myself again. Not the version my parents wanted. Not the version Brendan mocked. But the quiet, focused, curious version of me that used to stay up late imagining characters and stories just because it felt good. Art became the thing that grounded me. But it also became something else. Something useful. One day, messing around with digital design, I created a mock poster that exposed a fictional student hero secretly cheating and stealing. It was dramatic, over the top, kind of funny. I posted it anonymously on a school-wide meme forum under a burner account. It blew up. People started guessing who it was about. A few even said, "Sounds like Brandon, lol." I didn't reply. I just watched. That's when I realized something important. I didn't have to go to war with my family directly. I could work in silence. I could build something outside their system, something that didn't rely on them seeing me or validating me. So, I kept going. I started freelancing under a fake name, doing simple commissions online. Profile pictures, Twitch banners, logos. It wasn't much at first. $5 here, $10 there. But it gave me purpose. Gave me proof that I had value. Meanwhile, at school, Brendan's empire was showing cracks. I wasn't the only one he stepped on. A girl in our class, Rachel, smart, quiet, always polite, got caught up in one of his lies. Brendan had asked her to write a history paper for him in exchange for math help. She did it. He ghosted her. She told a few friends. Word spread. Brendan denied it, of course. Said she was lying because he turned her down. Typical playbook. But the seed was planted, and I watered it anonymously. I made another poster. This time with exact quotes Brendan had used in messages I'd saved. Just changed enough not to trace back to me. Just do it for me. It's not a big deal. Some hero, huh? The meme caught fire again. Teachers started paying attention. One of Brendan's soccer teammates pulled him aside, demanding to know what was going on. Brendan, for the first time, started to panic. He came home irritable, accusing me of spying. He ripped through my backpack one afternoon when I wasn't home and confronted me that night. "Where's your phone?" I blinked. "In my pocket." "Let me see it." "Why?" "I want to check your accounts." I scoffed. No, he stepped closer, squaring his shoulders. "You think you're smart, huh? Think you can mess with me?" I didn't flinch. I just looked him dead in the eye. "Better men than you have tried." It was the first time I ever saw a flicker of real fear behind his eyes. Not because of anything I'd done, but because I wasn't afraid anymore. That scared him. From that point on, I knew I was close. The school was looking into several honor code violations. Brendan's name came up more than once. His grades slipped. His coach benched him. My parents didn't know the half of it, and Brandon wasn't telling them. He was trying to clean up the mess himself, but he couldn't, because every time he lied, someone else popped up to call it out. And I stayed quiet, still invisible, still ghosting through the house, until the day I got a message that changed everything. It was from Rachel. "Hey, I know it was you. Just wanted to say thank you. Whatever happens, you're not alone." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I replied, "You're not alone either. Just wait." Because the ride wasn't over yet. I wasn't done. I was still building, still gathering, still waiting for the final piece of the puzzle. The moment where the truth wouldn't just come out, it would explode. And when it did, there would be no walking it back. The strange thing about power is how quiet it is when it finally arrives. There was no thunderclap, no epic moment where I looked in the mirror and suddenly knew myself. The transformation didn't happen overnight. But by the time October rolled around, I realized I wasn't the same kid who sat on his bedroom floor in silence after being accused. I'd been kicked, ignored, blamed, and buried under Brendan's lies. And somehow, I hadn't just survived it. I'd learned from it. I'd stopped asking to be seen. I started working in the dark, in silence, in control. And now, for the first time, I wasn't waiting for karma. I was building it. The shift at school had already begun. Brendan's name no longer carried the glow it used to. The first crack had formed after Rachel's incident, and I'd widened it with every subtle jab, memes, rumors, quotes, anonymous posts. Each one planted doubt. Each one forced Brendan to scramble for damage control, to explain or lie or accuse. But more importantly, each one made him paranoid. He didn't know who was behind it. And that was the beauty of it. I wasn't fighting him on his turf. I was fighting him on mine, quietly, surgically, like a shadow in the hall. But if I wanted this to end the way it needed to end, I'd have to stop being anonymous eventually. I'd have to take the risk, step out of the shadows and end it all at once with one carefully aimed blow. And for that, I needed to be ready. So, I made a checklist. Phase 1, gather everything. I spent hours each night compiling, organizing, cataloging. I dug deeper into the USB drive I had labeled Exhibit A, adding folders, cross-referencing dates, screen-recording chat messages, taking photos of Brendan's stash in the garage. I even added screenshots from the school's online portal, his late assignments, forged attendance excuses, even his grade slips. Aunt Sarah had once taught me how to organize digital folders during a weekend she babysat me back when I was 9 and obsessed with putting every downloaded cartoon in the right folder. It came in handy now. The end result was a perfectly ordered archive. Dated, labeled, time-stamped. Undeniable. Phase 2, secure allies. Rachel was the first person I trusted. She had every reason to dislike Brandon, but she also had integrity. She didn't want to stoop to his level until I showed her just how low he'd actually sunk. When I gave her a redacted version of the folder with names blurred, she stared at it for a long time. "This is all real." I nodded. "Every bit of it, and it's just the surface." She looked at me with something between horror and awe. "What do you want to do?" "I want to take him down," I said. "Not just at school. I want the people who protected him to see who he really is." Rachel didn't even blink. "Okay, I'm in." And just like that, I wasn't alone anymore. She helped me refine the plan. We made lists of people Brandon had hurt, students, teachers, even coaches, people who'd been lied to, used, disrespected. We didn't ask for revenge. We asked for stories, proof, screenshots, messages, anything. Within a week, we had enough to double the size of the original folder. There was the student Brandon had bribed with concert tickets to write his chemistry paper. The sophomore he threatened into giving him access to her Google Drive. A teacher's aide who quietly admitted Brandon had been caught plagiarizing, but the principal didn't want to ruin his scholarship chances. It wasn't a folder anymore. It was a case file. Phase 3, find a pressure point. Every system has a pressure point, a weakness. For Brandon, that was his scholarship. He'd been bragging for months about a partial ride to this elite private university. The recruiter had seen him play twice and left glowing feedback. My parents were ecstatic. Dad even framed the university's brochure. It wasn't an official offer yet, but it was close. Brandon said he expected to get it in writing by the end of fall semester. If something went wrong between now and then, the offer could disappear. I didn't want to just expose Brandon. I wanted to hit him where it hurt most. His future. His legacy. The thing my parents had built him up for since he could walk. But I also had to be careful. I didn't want to burn myself with the fire I was about to start. So, I created a new email account, studentreports@protonmail.com. Rachel helped me draft the message. It was calm, formal, respectful. "Dear, University name, Athletics Department, I am writing to express serious concerns about one of your potential recruits, Brandon, last name, from high school name. Over the last year, Brandon has been involved in multiple documented cases of academic dishonesty, theft, substance possession, and intimidation of fellow students. While I understand the importance of athletic performance, I believe you may want to review this material before making a final decision. Attached is a folder containing screenshots, messages, video evidence, and testimonies from multiple students and staff. All names have been redacted to protect the privacy of those involved. I hope you will consider this information seriously. A concerned student. We didn't send it yet. Not until everything else was in place. Phase 4, prime the blast radius. I started laying groundwork at school. Subtle, quiet groundwork. Rachel helped spread the word about an anonymous truth drop that was coming soon. Nobody knew what it was. Nobody knew who was behind it. But curiosity spread fast. People love drama, and high schoolers love secrets. The rumor mill started churning. We picked a day, November 3rd. I marked it on my calendar with a tiny red X, 10 days before the scholarship committee would meet. Right in the middle of midterms. And 2 days before my dad's company was set to sponsor Brandon for a Young Leaders Award at some local gala. It was perfect. And then something unexpected happened. Brandon finally cracked. It was the night of October 28th. I had just finished organizing the final version of the files when he barged into my room without knocking. He looked wild, hair messy, eyes bloodshot, fists clenched. "You've been talking to people," he said, voice low. "Rachel, Marcus, Jenna. You think I don't notice?" I didn't say a word. He stepped closer. "You're trying to destroy me." I didn't flinch. I just stared at him. "You stole Dad's card," he growled. "And they forgave you. You think anyone's going to believe you over me? You're pathetic. Always have been." I stood up, not aggressively, just enough to meet his eye. "You're scared." He blinked. I tilted my head. Because for the first time, someone sees you for what you really are, and you don't control the story anymore. Brendan's jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth would crack. But he didn't hit me. He just turned and stormed out. I closed my door behind him and smiled for the first time in days. Phase 5, light the fuse. On November 3rd, during the last class of the day, Rachel and I slipped USB drives into 3 teacher mailboxes, 1 counselor inbox, and the anonymous tip box in the principal's office. At the same time, we sent the email to the university. Then, I posted the link to the redacted folder on the school-wide meme forum with one sentence: "This is who's been running our school." Then, we went home. That night, the school exploded. Messages poured in. The link was shared hundreds of times. Screenshots circulated. People were shocked. Not because they hadn't suspected something was off about Brendan, but because they didn't realize just how deep the rot went. The teacher Brendan cheated off freshman year commented anonymously, "This confirms everything. I regret staying silent." A student athlete from another team wrote, "He tried to blackmail me into giving him our playbook." The next morning, Brendan didn't go to school. Neither did I. I stayed home and watched it unfold. And then my dad got a phone call. He picked it up in his office. I could hear his voice, confused at first, then sharp, then angry, not at me, at Brendan. He called him downstairs. There was yelling, footsteps, doors slamming, then silence. I didn't move. I just waited, because this wasn't the end yet. It was just the moment before the fallout. When the shouting finally stopped, I didn't go downstairs. I just sat on my bed, listening to the silence settle like dust after an earthquake. There was nothing left to say. Not yet. I'd done my part. Now it was their turn to face what they'd built and what they'd ignored. For the next 2 days, our house felt like a courtroom waiting for a verdict. Brendan didn't leave his room. My mom barely looked at me. My dad, who used to walk around the house like a CEO, was suddenly quiet, smaller. I overheard him on the phone more than once, first with the scholarship representative, then with the school principal, and once with someone I didn't recognize, murmuring phrases like total embarrassment and legal exposure. I didn't ask questions. I already knew the answers. The file had done its job. Brendan's scholarship? Gone. The university didn't even respond beyond a single sterile email thanking us for the submitted materials. His offer was rescinded the next day. The school hadn't announced it officially, but word spread fast. By Monday morning, everyone knew Brendan was off the team, suspended indefinitely pending a disciplinary review, and no longer on track for graduation with honors. But the worst part for him? The silence. No one defended him. Not the teachers, not the coaches, not even his so-called friends. Because when someone's armor finally cracks, people realize they were just hiding behind it all along. On the morning of the disciplinary hearing, my dad drove Brendan to school himself. He didn't say a word to me. My mom didn't either. She stood at the sink, washing a coffee mug that wasn't dirty, over and over again, her hands shaking just enough for me to notice. I didn't go to school that day either. I went to Aunt Sarah's house. She opened the door before I even knocked, holding a cup of tea and a look on her face that made me feel, for once, like I wasn't carrying this alone. "I saw the folder," she said, ushering me inside. "Rachel sent it to me. You're not mad?" Aunt Sarah sat down, gestured for me to do the same. "Alex, I'm proud of you." I didn't know what to say. I felt the emotion rise in my chest, heavy and unfamiliar. I hadn't realized how badly I needed to hear that until it left her mouth. "I just didn't want them to get away with it," I said quietly. Aunt Sarah nodded. "They didn't." She handed me a folded letter. "What's this?" "Read it." It was from the school board. A formal apology. Not handwritten, but printed, typed, institutional. But still real. They acknowledged the mishandling of prior incidents, especially the Electro Hub one. They had reopened past complaints tied to Brendan's name. And they thanked the student or students who courageously brought forward the evidence. That letter meant something. Maybe not to my parents, maybe not to Brandon. But to me, it was validation. I wasn't just some shadow in the house. I had a voice. And now they all knew it. Later that afternoon, when I got back home, the house was quiet again. But different. Not courtroom silent. Graveyard silent. I walked in to find my dad at the kitchen table, hands steepled, staring at nothing. "Sit," he said. I did. For the first time in my life, he looked at me like I was a stranger he couldn't quite figure out. "We just came back from the hearing," he said slowly. "Brandon's been expelled." I waited. No celebration, no smile. Just stillness. He admitted to everything, most of it. Said he felt pressured. That he didn't think he'd get caught. I stayed silent. Let him keep talking. They asked us how we didn't notice. How we let it go on this long. And the truth is, he trailed off. We didn't want to notice. There it was. The confession. He glanced up at me. His eyes weren't angry, just tired. "You were never the problem, Alex." It should have felt like victory. It didn't. "You let me believe I was," I said quietly. "I know." I stood up. "Is that it?" "No," he said, surprising me. "There's one more thing." He reached into a folder and slid something across the table. A check. $10,000. "What's this?" "Your mother and I talked. We know we can't undo what we did, but we want to invest in you. In your future. If you want to take classes, build your art, travel, whatever. It's yours." I stared at the check, then back at him. "You think this makes it even?" "No," he said. "I think it's a start." I took the check, but not for the money. For the acknowledgement. I would decide what it meant. Not them. Upstairs, Brandon's door was shut. It would stay that way for weeks. He didn't go back to school. He barely came out. I heard whispers of my parents scrambling to enroll him in some alternative program, trying to salvage what was left of his transcript. But the glow was gone. The golden boy had burned out. And the house felt different. Not better, not yet, but quieter. Over the next few months, I kept drawing. I launched a website under a pseudonym, showcasing my art. I started selling prints, taking bigger commissions. My work even got featured on a small digital art blog. I was still just a high schooler, but for the first time, I felt like I had something that was mine, a space no one could take or lie their way into. I stayed close with Rachel. We weren't dating or anything, but she became the kind of friend you don't let go of. The kind who saw the real you before the world did. And Aunt Sarah, she became more than an aunt. She became a partner in rebuilding. She helped me open a separate bank account. Gave me advice on taxes and contracts. Treated me like someone with a future, not just a kid who needed watching. My parents softened a little. My mom eventually apologized, awkwardly, tearfully. In that way people do when they've been wrong for so long they don't know how to start being right. I accepted it, but I didn't forget. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. Brandon never apologized. He left for some distant boarding school in December. I didn't say goodbye. Neither did he. But before he left, he did one thing I didn't expect. He slipped an envelope under my door. Inside was a drawing, one of mine, an old one from when I was 10. A robot holding a broken sword standing in front of a ruined castle. Brendan had written one sentence on the back: "You always were better at building things." It wasn't an apology, but it was something. And sometimes that's enough. Now, nearly a year later, I walk the same hallways Brendan once ruled. And people see me differently. Not because I ruined someone, but because I stood up when no one else would. Because I refused to let the truth stay buried. Because I reminded everyone, the quiet kid is still paying attention. And in the end, the one thing I always wanted wasn't revenge. It was to be heard. What would you have done if your own family refused to see you?